Welcome to today's episode. I am joined by Sally Tether, who is also living with migraine, and she's about 10 months into her healing journey to reduce pain. We'll be chatting about Sally's story, how she came to the mind body work, and the difference that's made for her. We actually met in a Curable group. We both subscribe to this Curable app, and they have an offer where you can join a group and get some further training and some group support. We connected to have this discussion because we have two different perspectives and also different experiences of how we came to this work and what's been working for us. So without further ado, Sally, welcome. Why don't we start with how long you've been living with migraine, first of all, just to give a kind of a basis of how long this has been affecting your life.
30 years,
That's
yeah. In all, started when I was 16 and I'm now 47, so 31 years. Wow.
Wow. Now that you know about the mind body connection, do you think your first mind body symptom was migraine or was it something before that?
Headaches, yeah. I was a very headachy child and I would tell myself why I was. I'd feel hungry and think, I'm going to get a headache, because it became a regular thing for me. And even as young as I can remember, I would take paracetamol or Nurofen and get home from school and make myself something to eat because I'd be hungry. And then I think, I'm going to get a headache if I get too hungry. But I don't remember having other mind-body symptoms other than I was just very sensitive and a worrier. I am worrying about doing the right thing, worrying about school, worrying about all sorts of things.
Yeah, we'll have to have a whole other episode on the personality traits of a mind body symptom because that is very classic, as we've now come to find out. When were you then finally diagnosed? Were you officially diagnosed at some point as a child?
There's a little bit of a backstory, because when I was 14, I had acute sinusitis. I actually went into hospital because I was very infected in my sinuses. And when I was 16, my mum thought, because I was in so much pain with my head, my mum thought, I need to call the doctors because Sally has obviously got her sinusitis back, because that's where the pain was, all here. And he said, no, she hasn't. She's got a migraine. So that was the first time I heard the word migraine when I was 16. My family had just broken up. My mum and dad were splitting up. That was the significant thing at the time that I do believe contributed to that start. However, I don't believe that's the reason that the migraine condition carries on. It's just at that moment, that was what was happening in my life, and I was dealing with that.
I think strong emotions in general, and especially as a child, I don't know if you were taught, but I was never taught how to deal with emotion. We never really talked about that. So if you don't really know how to express it or how to manage it on your own, I was always a big journaler, or kept a diary, I would say. So I was able to express some emotion, but in general, never dealt with it. And that's one of the things that can create these symptoms, as we know, is keeping things bottled up. I was asking about the diagnosis too, because I know in the US anyway, there's a huge shortage of headache specialists. So there's 39 million people with migraine living in the United States. And according to the Migraine Research Foundation, there's 700 headache specialists within the US to accommodate the 39 million with migraine. So it's a huge problem as far as trying to get people to a specialist or to be properly diagnosed anyway.
I was just diagnosed by my GP, my family doctor, and that was the first sort of time I'd heard that word, really. But it wasn't got them regularly then. In fact, the next time I remember having one was on my granddad's funeral, and I was 18. So I went 2 years, and I don't remember in that 2 years ever having that type of pain. Headaches, and you dealt with them, but I didn't remember having a migraine until I was 18. And I remember I was with my now husband, who was then my boyfriend, and we had to stop at the side of the road, and I was very sick. I remember thinking, I remember feeling like this. So that was the next time. And then from that point onwards, it was intermittent. I wouldn't say anywhere near chronic. It was just something that happened every now and again, and I just dealt with it. It wasn't a huge thing in my life at that point.
Did it ever become chronic, or was it always chronic? By the way, for anyone listening, is 15 or more a month and happening for 3 months or more. That's the technical definition of that.
I would say it became chronic after my second daughter. So when I was 27. Before that, I was very headachy through pregnancies. I got married young, 21. I had my first child, my first daughter, then my second at 27. And that was all wonderful stuff. But I was a person that gave myself a hard time over everything. Typical type A, always giving myself a hard time. I'd say after my second daughter, things got quite bad. It was definitely chronic then. And that's when I saw my first neurologist, who did lots of tests and put me on a preventative, because up until then, it was just abortive medication. And he said, it's a good idea, as you're having this many migraines, to go on a preventative. And that's when I started down that route of trying everything that I was recommended to try. I never said no to anything. I was like, I'll give it a go if it's going to help me. Fortunately, nothing ever did. Never, ever did I get any improvement from preventatives at all. So I quickly came off them, because quite often they had a more negative effect and I was in a worse state mentally after taking them. Back then, I was happy. I was living with this chronic condition. I was a happy, I am quite a positive person in a lot of ways. So I would bounce back. I would enjoy my family time. I enjoyed being a mum. I enjoyed being a wife. I enjoyed running my business. I was very happy. And people used to say to me, are you stressed? And I think, no, I'm not stressed. I'm not, definitely not stressed. There's another reason for this. And my auntie Margaret, who I'm very close to, she suffered with migraines. I used to think, oh, it must be genetic and I will get to the bottom of it. And somewhere deep down inside, I'd always believed that I would one day be better. I had that hope. I had that belief that this isn't it for me. I will find something that will help me. And I always believed it was a doctor or a neurologist or a headache specialist or a drug or something of that nature that would make me better at that point. But gradually, as the years went by, I did lose hope in that. And a very low point for me was when I saw the second neurologist that I'd ever seen. And he said, Sally, you are medication dependent. That's when I was told to keep a diary. I used to write down how many out of 10 my pain would be, what I used to treat it, how long it lasted. And my whole diary was just full of this pattern of pain. I saw the neurologist and he said, you've got to stop taking so many abortives. We need to try and help you. So I had Botox and a nerve and all the things. And I did a 3 months detox coming off all my abortive medications, which that was a hard time. I had a lot of help and my kids were young. So you're trying to manage being the best mum you can. And going through something like that, literally had to take every medication out of the house, because when you're in that much pain, you will take anything. But gradually I got better, and I did it with a program with the neurologist. After the 3 months, I felt a huge improvement and the migraines were less all of a sudden.
Can I stop you there, because I want to dig into what that program was, but I want to also explain to people why it's a problem to take so many of the abortive medications. Is that you then start to develop rebound headaches or medication overuse headache.
That's it.
The problem is that when you take too many medications, and I think I've read 10 or more a month, I'm not sure if I'm correct on that, but you can develop this medication overuse headache, which then is this really vicious cycle, because you need the medication to take it because you're in pain, but yet because you're taking it or because you're taking too many, then you're getting headaches because of that. You're the first person that I've actually talked to that's actually had to do this detox off of it. And you're saying, why I stopped you is because you were saying that you felt better from that. And I have heard this often, that it's really painful, obviously, to come off of that and to not be able to take pain medication when you're on it, especially not knowing the mind body healing techniques and that sort of thing, not understanding what you could be doing for it. It's just your mindset at that point, I assume, was probably still frantic and I'm in pain. This is not good.
It was pure determination that I was going to do it because I wanted to have a better life. And I was told that was what I needed to do, and I was going to do it. I'm quite a strong person when it comes to that, but it was one of the hardest things that, yeah, it was tough. And after that, I was very careful about what I took. I picked and chose my battles with the pain. If I thought I could cope with it, I did. If I didn't, then I took medication, but it was always in the back of my mind. I don't want to go down that route again. I do not want to be medication dependent. But unfortunately, it happened to me again years later. So I'm wanting to say about a few years back, I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, I remember what this feels like. I'm taking too many. And the thing is, there's a fine line between too many, because I was probably only just going over what I was told to. So you're told to not have more than 10 a month. And I was only probably just going over that, but consistently taking a little bit more than what you should makes a huge difference. And at that point, that was probably my lowest part. I was having lots of horrible thoughts. I blamed myself, lots of negative self-talk. Why am I in this mess? What have I done to deserve this? Very
victim kind of mentality.
Yeah, complete victim. It's not fair. I couldn't bear to see what everyone I knew was out doing when I was laying in bed a lot of the time. Because I ran my own business, I would quite often manage that. There were times when I cancelled, but I would pretty much push through. But then it would come to the weekend when it was family time or time to spend with my husband and friends, and I would pretty much think, no, I can't do that. I've got nothing left in the tank. I am done. I want to get into bed, and that's where I'm going to stay. And I became very depressed at that point. And my life had become very small. I was saying no to more things, and that was just the way it was. So I knew that I had to do something, and I didn't really want to go back down the route of going back to my neurologist and going on that detox. So I decided to look for things to help myself. I got some counselling. I went for regular acupuncture. I was going 2 to 3 times a week at some point. And I managed to get off the medication once again. Took me the 3 months. I didn't take it for 3 months. I actually didn't take any medication for 6 months back then. And I was again in a much better place. I wasn't getting the rebound migraines from overusing the medication, so they were coming less. So again, it worked.
Then they came back after that again.
That detox didn't last as well as I did the first time round, because I just quickly slipped back into the taking, and I never really got back my positivity after that. Maybe for a bit, but things, yeah. I think sometimes you have to reach rock bottom in order to find your way out. And I think at that time, when I was just scrolling on Facebook and the curable post came up, and whether I had seen it before and dismissed it or hadn't, and it just happened to say, pain is your brain's opinion of how much danger you're in. I clicked on it and I downloaded the app, and I went and showed my husband. I was like, what do you think? And he's always been my rock. He's always been research trying to help me. And he was like, let's give it a go. What have we got to lose? So I downloaded the Curable app, and when I say I dived into it, I just submerged myself. I did all the education part of it. I had this belief that was then going to be the answer.
I remember what you said at the beginning, though, when you first saw that and you saw the message. What did you think at the very beginning? Oh, no way. That can't be.
Part of me did, but the other part of me was curious, and that's why I clicked on it.
Okay.
I wasn't absolutely no way, but maybe I was at a time that I was ready to absorb that information. If I'd have seen that a year ago, I would have thought, no, that can't help me. But
I bring that up because I remember a conversation that we had, and it was that we were both very skeptical of the work at first. How could the brain, how could that work? And
yeah,
but we were both curious enough and desperate enough, I think, in my case anyway, of what do I have to lose? Like you said, you might as well try a different approach, because the approach that I had been using for 33 years clearly wasn't working. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I never ever considered that the brain was the answer, or changing my belief and learning about the mind body condition was the, it never entered my head. And now I think, how could it not have? Because it makes so much sense. But at the time, it was a lot to take in, definitely, because I viewed migraine as a disease. I was told by numerous neurologists that I would probably always have it. Looking back, that was probably one of the things that did send me on a spiral, when I was offered a drug that I really was hoping to be offered, but I was told that it wouldn't be the answer to my prayers and I would probably always have migraine. That is not a good thing to hear, because at that point I thought, oh, maybe I won't, maybe I do have this hope, and that sort of did crash my hope down.
It's interesting because I think we're so susceptible to what the doctors or what the experts are saying. And we think it's interesting for me to hear that you had hope. When you were talking earlier, you were saying you never thought this was going to be your lot in life. You were going to get out of it somehow, until maybe doctors were mentioning that you're going to live like this. But I never had that hope. I started getting them at 17, and I heard the diagnosis, and it was like, yeah, this is, your father has them, your grandfather had them, this is genetic, this is a disease, this is incurable. And what do I know at 17? That's what the doctor says. You believe the doctor. And it's just, I don't think I ever looked for anything other than symptom relief. You know what I mean? Until within my 50s, that it was like I heard the MindBody information and just thought, okay, wait, what's that? And then I started getting some hope that, wait, all these people are curing themselves of this chronic pain, not just migraine, but I was seeing all kinds of things, back pain, whatever. And it was finally an eye opener of, maybe it doesn't have to be that way. But all my life, I think I just never really, I was just looking for a better pain medication, because clearly over the years, certain ones did work, certain ones didn't work. But it's very damaging. I received that same message about depression, that this is just, you're going to have to be on medication the rest of your life. This is just a imbalance in your brain that's basically never going to go away. And that is definitely not true in my case. So you have to be a little bit, yeah, I want to be cautious here. Physicians obviously have their place, but I think with the diagnosis, and when we start hearing you're going to be this way, or it's genetics, or then you lose all hope. And that's really damaging. And that, I think, is one message that I want to get across in anything that I do, is to question that, because it's just simply not the case. It doesn't have to be the case.
Absolutely.
And so then by the time you found the curable, you started doing the app, then you joined the group, obviously, that's where we had met. And at this point, you are, just go into a little bit of how you're feeling now and
I didn't join
different.
the group until quite a long way in, because I felt a bit stuck. Initially, I did all the education on the Curable app. Then I dived into all the interviews and the therapist advice, which was Alan Gordon. And I then listened to a pod with Nicole Sachs. And then I started diving into all her podcasts daily, every single day, maybe 2 or 3 a day sometimes. And everything she said about suppressing emotions just resonated with me. I started journaling daily for 20 minutes, and this really helped initially. Yeah, I felt like it was really going to save me. I felt better for doing it, and bringing up feelings and things that had happened from my subconscious. I didn't know I had any idea about some of the things that I was writing about, and it was very good for me at that time. It was all part of my journey. I got to a certain stage with it, and I was still, my migraines had reduced down by about half, I would say. And then I felt, how can I make it even better? So I started listening to down his daily messages about mindset, and that really helped. Little snippets of information along with what I was already doing really helped me, and I joined his group. But still, I was in a place where I think, no, I can be better than this. I still had a lot of the fear, and I wanted to try and navigate my way through that. So that's when I joined the curable group. And that, not at the time and not while I was doing it, but I very much feel since doing the 12-week program, that was a game changer, because everything we learn, I have now been able to implement into my life. At the time, you learn all this information and you think, how can that help? But gradually your brain remembers it, and it realizes that by implementing these changes, it will help you, and it has. So I really feel like that's taken me to the next level. I'm now probably getting 4 migraines a month as opposed to over 15, 17, 19 sometimes.
Oh, that's amazing.
It really is. It's changed my life. My husband commented the other day that he had a new wife.
Oh, that's so great.
And I do feel like a different person.
You're talking about going bike riding and swimming and doing all these things. And every time you say, I got my life back, I always am like, oh, that's so great. I love to hear that, because that's how I feel too. It's just such a difference.
Absolutely. At the beginning part of the journey, you're just trying to be better. You're trying to find something, the magic thing that's going to help. I'm now in my journey, because I'm still on this journey. I'm not trying so hard. I'm now enjoying life. I'm now have hobbies. I'm not so desperate in order to get my life back, because I am getting my life back. So the desperation eases off. And I think when you're in that state, that doesn't help your nervous system regulate, because you're so in a state of, I want to get better, I want to get better. But gradually I learned to calm the nervous system by knowing that I could help myself by learning all the things that I've learned, and knowing that there was absolutely nothing wrong with me and that I would one day recover. Knowing that deep down, having that mindset that I'm okay, I will be okay, has got me through it.
I think that's one of the biggest differences for me, is this mindset. It was so frantic all those years. As soon as I would feel the pain, it would just set off this whole, it's going to ruin my day. I don't have time for this. I was working in a corporation at the time, all the different meetings I would have to cancel, and what that would mean for the extra work I would have to make up for afterwards. If it could go away, could I get home? Where could I lay down? There was just so many things in that would trigger this frantic energy, is how I like to, or the only way I can describe it, is just this like franticness. And now that is completely gone. Well, I say completely gone. I will say there are times when the pain comes. If it gets to a certain point, there is a point where my brain clicks over and it's, oh no, and I get this fear again. But for the most part, that's not happening. If I get pain, it's a dull headache. And I really am able to be very neutral about it and just say, it's not a problem. I'm safe. Or a lot of times now I know why it's come, and I can just recalculate and do some different things. And so it's just a very different ease about it, I guess you could say. And I see those two things now, knowing about the nervous system dysregulation. It's, yeah, of course, back when I had this franticness and this fear and all upsetting myself, what that would do to your body versus keeping calm and trying to, it's not an easy thing to do. It's a learned thing over time to be able to be a little bit more neutral about it, I guess I would say. Helps.
Yeah. I would say this journey is tough. It's one of the hardest things I've done, but it's the most rewarding. I wouldn't change it. I feel so grateful for finding that curable app and for the whole journey. There's so many tools out there, and everyone's journey is so different, but it is possible to improve your life. And I'm very grateful for that.
I think it is important, though, to say that this is a lifetime journey. There are people that are absolutely reversing their chronic pain and never in pain again. But I see it's a lifetime journey of just, I think Nicole Sachs says it best, where she says, we are living a human existence in a mind-body system. So there's always going to be stressors that come up. There's always going to be something, life events, etc., that we have to navigate through. That's why I say lifelong journey of just managing the ebbs and flows of the emotions that come in and the big events and different things. And sometimes will that trigger pain? Maybe. But the point I think now is that you get less and less fearful for that to happen because you know that you have techniques, you have the ability to not have that derail your entire day or your entire existence going forward. It's not going to be that way for the future.
Yeah, I still go to fear, but I can observe that's happening and then make a decision to not go down that route and come on. And I can talk myself out of it, which I never really realized that fear had anything to do with the condition I had. I just thought it was anxiety, and that went along with having a chronic condition. I never realized that I had any say over whether I was fearful or not. And now I know I'm in control. I just see life a bit differently now. I don't take it too seriously. I feel my emotions more, and I don't blame myself and beat myself up. I cut myself some slack, and I'm not always on edge. Whereas before I would be busy and everything was a big deal and I've got to do this and I used to let everything get on top of me. If I didn't achieve everything I wanted to achieve in the day, that would be my fault. I wasn't being very kind to myself. I realize that now. Whereas now,
yeah, this self-compassion part of it and this inner critic that we each have, yeah, that's a big part of the healing.
Definitely.
It's been helpful.
Huge. Those two things have been huge in my journey. Self-compassion, I never thought that was a thing. I never thought that would make any difference. But that has been one of the things that has got me through, I think, in this latter stage, definitely.
I think we each have an inner critic inside beating ourselves up, and most of us have a fairly unkind inner critic. And I think it just is normal and you just don't even know that's what it is. But once it gets labeled and you start looking at it or start actually becoming aware of the messages that you're sending yourself every day, it's you would never treat a friend like that. I've been told try to treat yourself as you would a child with a migraine. You would never say, come on, it's your fault for this.
Yeah, one of the first things I heard, and I think it was from Alan Gordon, was thoughts aren't facts. And I was, yeah, that makes sense. But when a thought comes in, I used to listen to it and then ruminate on it and make it bigger. And now the thoughts still come in, things, negative things. And I'm like, no, I don't have to go down that route. I don't have to be dragged into that. I know that's not helpful. I'm not going there. Yeah.
It was big to even understand that you can control your thoughts. A lot of people think a thought is a thought, it just comes in and you have no control over that. But absolutely, you can, like you said, once you become aware of it, then pivot and say, okay, that one's not helpful. Let's not go down that rabbit hole, but let's go over here. There's many techniques that you can do, and it makes a huge difference in the way you're feeling and then the dysregulation or not dysregulation of your nervous system.
Absolutely. Meditation's a great one for that. Just trying to ground yourself. And I never thought I would be a person that'd be into meditation. I never thought I would have the time, but making time for yourself, putting yourself first, there's no harm in that.
Yeah, that was a hard one too, but yeah, definitely part of the process. Everybody else and everything else was more important than I was at the time. But once you start realizing if you don't make the time, if you don't do that, there's no way to actually have any change. So you start to get good at it. I think, and like you were saying, you have to hit rock bottom. I definitely had my rock bottom point, and then I just became fiercely protective of my being and my mental health, and anybody that was a threat to that, I put myself in this bubble, and it was this self-protective mode that I automatically went into. I didn't do it on purpose, but I just really isolated myself, and anybody that was around me that had that frantic energy or that complaining a lot or stressed and always talking about how stressed they were, or just had this, different people have different energies to them. So some people are just like calm and go about their business. Some people are just like, and I just couldn't be around that for a while. And so now I'm a little bit more tolerant of it. But at that time, it just becomes this, you have to go into a little bit more of a protective mode to make sure that you're able to manage. It's bad enough to have our inner critic and all these other thoughts that we have and fear-based thinking to dysregulate our own system. But then from the outside, there's all these other influences, or the news, or the politics now, or there's so many other things that can dysregulate.
Until I started this and we met like-minded people with other mind-body conditions, you realize how many people are going through this. You're not on your own. I think the community side of this has helped me tremendously, believing that I'm not the only one suffering like this. I'm not the only one trying to navigate this. There's a lot of us out there.
Yes. We've talked about this, I know, but I know all the other groups and people out there are looking at this as mind-body condition, just as one, that your migraine is the same as your back pain, is the same as fibromyalgia, is the same as all the other different things. And I got a lot out of that. We both healed in communities like that. But really what I want to do with Migraine Oasis is pull apart, and some would say I'm doing the wrong thing maybe as far as having it just be migraine, because migraine is just a mind-body condition. It's the same as all these others. But I really just feel like our experience is very different. And a migraine with the triggers that we think are triggers, we'll have an episode on that for sure, of just discussing what we thought were triggers and now how we view them. And just all these different things. When I was searching for this information, okay, what does that mean about my triggers? Does it mean it's not? Or does it, the migraine threshold, what does that mean for that then, if in this mind body condition? So just all these different things I want to explain from a standpoint of a migraine person, or have the community of people that understand what that debilitating pain is, and how I just think it's different than back pain or some of these other things.
I 100% agree with you. My mum said to me, it is different. My mum's never had a migraine, and she suffered with other pain, hip pain, back pain, arm pain. And she said, my back pain or my hip pain or my arm pain would never stop me going to an event. Yeah, pain isn't nice. And I'm not disputing anyone else's experience of pain. But with migraine, I used to say to my husband, if I just had the pain of the head, I could cope with that. But it was everything else that went with it, the aura, the sickness, the confusion, the disassociation, my kids would ask me a question and I could hear them, but I couldn't respond half the time. It was a very delayed, you can't function socially like that. So to me, Migraine Oasis is brilliant, because it's going to set aside, not that we're special or we're different, but I really feel that migraine is very different to all the other conditions in that way.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Yeah, we talked about a little bit too about depression, and there are other things that come along with migraine that are these, what's called comorbidity, but the symptom on top of symptoms. So you have the migraine, then you have other symptoms that come along with that, whether it's depression or anxiety or all these other things that come along with it. And I think that as we start to heal, other things start to take care of themselves almost. It's not the depression just goes away miraculously, but it's some of the other aches and pains and different things that have been around that you don't realize are also mind body symptoms or conditions start to also, as you start doing this work, start to take care of themselves and start fading away into the background. Actually, that's a Sally Tether saying. I love that. When you were talking about your migraines now have gone into the background, I think about that all the time, because for 34 years, I said 33 before, 34 years, they were front and center in everything. And now for the last 3 years, it's just in the background. I love that kind of visual, that you're able to have that kind of fade more and more. But I think that's a good message to send people, that if you have other symptoms that are going on, that it can, as you start doing this work, start helping to alleviate them as well.
For sure, I had depression and anxiety, which was all as a result of having so many migraines. There's no way I would have been depressed without it. It just got me down. Every day was a battle. Every day was a fight. I don't think you can have a chronic migraine for that long and not feel, you'd be superhuman to not have the other problems that go alongside it. But yeah, they just dissipated now. I do still get occasionally anxious. If I have a plan in my diary, and sometimes the thought does pop into my head, well, what if I can't manage that? What if I get a migraine? But then I can quickly bring that round. It doesn't completely go away, but it's not taking over my life. It's not all I think about, most definitely, anymore.
That's been one of, the biggest difference for me. I think that's a good place to end, actually, because just hoping that other people can do the same, and that some of the conversations that we have of other topics and this mind body work can help people to get the mindset and get the healing that can put their migraines into the background. That would be the goal, I think, the best thing that could be the outcome of the work that we're trying to do.
If I could help one person out of despair, I feel like I'm glad I've done this podcast with you, because it's not a nice place to be, and there is a way out of it.
Definitely. Great. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate you being vulnerable and telling your story. And I hope that you are going to come back on many of the podcasts and give your feedback and your side of the story. We have so many topics to cover, and I know we differ on some. We are very much similar on some. And I just, love chatting with you and the banter back and forth.
Thank you. I'm so glad that I've been able to take part, and I look forward to chatting to you about all those topics as well. Thank you.
Good. I'll also put the links to the resources that we chatted about in this episode underneath in the show notes, so that people can easily find them, that we were talking about Nicole Sachs and Dan Bruglio and Alan Gordon, those type of people, because they were really instrumental in the Curable app.